Hey guys, so that was our first flight on the Bearhawk. I can honestly say that it's quite the experience to go flying in an airplane for the first time after you've built it. There's not much like it. It's quite the adrenaline rush, and it's just super rewarding. So unfortunately, one of my GoPros kind of crapped out right before this video, so I didn't get to do any in-cockpit stuff, which is fine. I just needed to focus on flying anyway. So I'm going to kind of tell you guys how the flight went, since I didn't get to talk in cockpit at all. So basically this little strip that we're based off of, it's 2,400 foot grass strip. We've got obstacles on both ends. It's pretty narrow, and there's absolutely, there's almost nowhere to go if you have an engine failure. So it's not the ideal test flight strip, but we're working with what we had. And so basically we took off. I had a south wind, and you'll see in the video that once I get some altitude I bank over to the right. So that's to follow a couple of fields that I have that you could potentially land in if you had to. They're not ideal, but it's the best scenario. So I usually kind of bank over the top of those and climb out over those while I'm headed to the south. So I basically took off from here and started climbing. So once I had some sufficient altitude underneath me, I made a circle and turn, climbed out over some big fields that we had, and went ahead and climbed up to altitude. So I maintained 75% power or greater on that first flight. So I was running a little over 25 squared, 26 squared at times, just running her hard, trying to get that engine broke in. And I was messing with mixtures and all that kind of stuff, tweaking on the engine a little bit during that first flight. And so I did have cylinder temps drop during that first flight. I think that had to do with me messing with mixtures, but in all honesty, I think the engine did seat the rings in that first flight, and really there shouldn't have been much left. It's a factory Lycoming engine, and it was run in. However, I did have the jugs off of it, but they should have seated in the cylinders. It all went right back in the same place, and so we weren't seeing high oil temps at all. Oil never got over 193, and that is partially due to the massive oil cooler that's in the thing. And so really this first flight went fantastic. I went up and I circled for a little bit over an hour, just kind of getting used to the airplane and everything. Tested the flaps, went all the way through full flaps, and took it to the first sign of a stall. Decided, all right, first flight, we're gonna come back in, and we're gonna run 3 notches of flaps and 65 mile an hour. So that's a really, really good, safe, stable approach speed for a first flight. Whenever I was doing stalls, I was getting indications in the low 50s, just kind of first onset, so gives a good margin. And I had gone down and flown the prototype previously, and that's a really good approach speed in that airplane, so we expected to be about the same. And so basically we went up, flew for an hour, everything went really, really well, and then we came down and made a decent landing. I was about, I don't know, 12 inches high on that first landing, but this landing gear, I'll have a video on that. It's not the factory Bearhawk gear, but this landing gear that's on the airplane is absolutely amazing. And so when that happened, we just kind of, it eats everything up. So we were just slightly high on that first flare, nothing too bad, and came in. It was really pretty uneventful. So that's the gist of our first flight. There was nothing crazy, nothing really that unexpected. Really the only squawks I had on this first flight were I had a very, very slow roll to the left. Nothing too crazy. Basically needed to fix that. And then the only other thing I had was we did have some kind of high engine temps, so we kind of need to mess with some cooling here and there to see what we can get figured out. And strangely enough, the hot cylinder on this engine is number 2, which is my front left. Typically you would expect back right to be hot, number 5, which is the second hottest, but number 2 is the hottest. And so we're gonna mess with some cooling devices and stuff like that, and I'll show you guys kind of what we did for that. But yeah, that's flight number 1. Super exciting, no complaints really. Airplane flies beautiful. It's an absolute rocket ship. It does over 1,500 feet a minute on climb out, well over. We'll get some good numbers on that, but it's 1,500 to 2,000, somewhere in there depending on the day. So climbs great, flies great, and no major squawks on the first flight. Literally just 2 minor. Need to do a flight control shim, and we just need to fine tune some engine cooling. But other than that, that is it. I was super happy, super impressed that I managed to get first flight done with almost no squawks. But yeah, leave your comments below. Tell me what you guys want to see. My plan is to do a video series on the whole test flying, show you guys all the little tweaks that I make during test flight. And really, I don't think there's going to be that many, but there's always, I mean, that's what your phase 1's for, is to do some little tweaks here and there to improve the airplane and get to know the airplane. So, yeah, if you like this video, subscribe, join me on the next one, and we will see you shortly.